Yo, what's up, guys? Teacher Paul here, and today we are reacting to a coffee request. Today's coffee request comes from Bertil, and thank you so much. Bertil says, I requested the movie about the Battle of Tampere. Here is a video about the actual war, where about... This is a video what the actual war was about and what happened. I maybe should have requested it before you watched the movie, but it doesn't make the movie more or less enjoyable anyway. Yeah, great movie. Go watch it. It's on my YouTube channel. And so this is a little bit more information. This is from a channel called History Hustle. Shout out to Finland. And guys, we are live here. So join us on Twitch so you can watch and, chat to me live. Okay, let's check this out.
Not only Russia experienced a civil war where the Reds fought against the Whites. Also, in Finland there was such a conflict. But instead of several years, it lasted several months. And instead of the Reds achieving victory, the Finnish White forces won the conflict. In this video you're going to learn about the Finnish Civil War and why the Reds lost.
It's going to be interesting.
Back on the channel. If you're new, I'm Stefan. I'm a Dutch history teacher and I like to make videos about history.
He's Dutch.
And if you find it interesting, well, consider subscribing and also hit the notification bell. You can support me via Patreon, via PayPal, or via a super thanks. You can all find the information below the video. The Grand Duchy of Finland was annexed by Russia in 1809 after being taken from Sweden. Finnish identity began to emerge after the adaptation of universal suffrage and the establishment of a parliament following the 1905 revolution. However, Tsar Nicholas II undermined the parliament's authority by ignoring its decisions and calling for new elections. This fueled frustration with Russian rule and the Tsar's policy of Russification, attempts to impose Orthodox Christianity and the use of Russian in schools caused resentment in the largely Lutheran region. Industrialization in southern Finland led to the growth of socialist groups, which clashed with the Swedish-speaking landowners who favored closer ties with Germany. Because of its autonomous status, Finland was neutral during World War I, albeit that 1,500 Finns fought at the side of the Russians or the Germans, in that case in the Royal Prussian 27th Jaeger Battalion. These men were called the Finnish Jaegers. Finland therefore was not severely hit by the war and did not experience the same brutalization as other countries did by the returning of countless of traumatized veterans. Yet, the Finnish Civil War was a savage conflict in which 36,000 people perished, which was 1% of the total Finnish population. How did it got so far? The fall of the...
Wow, so it didn't last years, but in the months that it lasted, 1% of the Finnish population, was lost. That is absolutely insane. It was a really brutal couple of months. Imagine 36,000 people in just a few months.
The Romanovs in 1917 created a political crisis as the Finnish head of state was the Russian Tsar. In response, the Finnish parliament passed the Power Act, effectively declaring independence. But this was rejected by both the Russian provisional government as well as by right-wing groups in Finland. The right-wing parties eventually won a small majority in the subsequent elections. They had set up their civil guard to maintain order. Many Finnish socialists therefore lost faith in the political system. They turned to revolution as a means of protecting their rights. The prelude of the Civil War came in mid-November 1917 when, inspired by the events in Petrograd, Finnish trade unions joined forces with the Social Democrats as well as with Otto Kusinen's Finnish Bolsheviks in calling for a general strike in which armed Red Guards were pitted against supporters of Finland's independence. Clashes between them occurred. From this point on, Finland backed into revolution and civil war, with the Germans and Soviet Russians in supporting roles. Other than Mannerheim, no charismatic figure emerged to lead the political charge on either side. The conflict escalated not as a result of foreign interference, but as a byproduct of Bolshevik agitation among the Russian armed forces and in the Finnish factories. As the two
So basically, what I understood from that last part is that it was lacking strong leadership, and strong leadership can literally save a country. So basically, they didn't have any charismatic figure or character, and it just became a mess, I would suppose.
two sides, Finnish Reds versus Finnish
No
Whites,
direction, I
tried to
guess.
gain control over the exercise of armed forces. The Germans tipped the balance. Soviet Russia had endorsed Finnish independence, but Russian forces remained on Finnish soil, albeit in a process of dissolution. As long as the peace talks between them and the Central Powers were going on at Brest-Litovsk, Germany was not allowed to intervene in the conflict in Finland. Clashes ensued on the 19th of January in Viipuri, where the Russian troops and Finnish Red Guards seized control of a weapon factory. For 3 days there was sporadic fighting, after which the Finnish Home Guard chased them out. On the 27th of January
The Home Guard.
1918, the Finnish Red
So this is the movie we watched. In the movie, the Battle of Tempera, we saw the Home Guard, the Home Guard's attempt to push them out.
Guards, or the Workers' Guards, which were supported by the Bolsheviks in Petrograd, toppled the government of Pierre Eivind Svinhuvud. Svinhuvud fled by ship. A new government, the Council of People's Representatives, was established. There were similarities as what had happened in Petrograd, where also a small group of Bolsheviks had seized power by storming the Winter Palace and occupying strategic places. And the civil wars that followed, both in Russia and in Finland, was a conflict of Reds versus Whites. Many contemporaries frequently conflated the two conflicts. Historian Robert Garworth wrote the following about it. In reality, the two civil wars were quite distinct, and the often alleged Russian involvement in the Finnish Revolution was actually rather marginal, with no more than 5 to 10% of those fighting for the Reds being Russian volunteers. More importantly, the Finnish Reds were not Bolsheviks, at least not the majority. Even if Bolshevik-inspired Red Guards had carried out the coup in Helsinki, thereby triggering the Civil War, it was the more moderate Finnish Social Democrats who almost immediately assumed control of the revolutionary movement, which temporarily gained power in the towns and industrial centers of southern Finland. As tensions grew in Finland, Finnish troops that were serving for the Germans on the Eastern Front, the Jägers, they were withdrawn from the front. Berlin decided to use these men to develop the Finnish.
This is a completely random question, probably off topic, but you know, do you think this the Civil War inspired the Eren Jäger from the name Jäger from Attack on Titan? Probably, right? There are so many Nordic things that inspire pop culture.
Civil Guards, which became known as the White Guards, into an effective fighting force. But why did Germany have interest in Finland? Didn't the Germans have their hands full in the war to end all wars? First, Germany wanted Finland to become an independent pro-German nation. Therefore, the flow of Swedish raw materials could continue. A hostile Finland could disrupt the flow of iron ore. Second, the Central Powers could make use of Finland's natural resources. Third, the Germans were looking at the future. The Germans knew that the British and French had provided significant support to the Russian army through aid shipments to the ports of the White Sea, situated in the icy northern region. By forming an alliance with Finland, the Germans could potentially endanger the railway connection archangels to the rest of Russia. To that end, Germans created the Baltic Division and placed it under command of Major General Rüdiger von der Goltz. Coming from a family with many men serving in the German army, Goltz was in many respects a typical Russian Junker. Highly patriotic, utterly devoted to the army and deeply suspicious of Germany's enemies, particularly the British. Before the war he had served in the foreign section of the General Staff and had come to the conclusion that war with Britain was inevitable, given the determination of the British to prevent Germany from securing its rightful place in world trade. Now von der Goltz had to work with the Finnish conservatives. He wanted to intervene as soon as possible. Because of the thick ice in the Baltic Sea, going ashore right away was not advised. Von der Goltz was assisted by Karl Emil Gustav Mannerheim. His ancestry came from Germany, Sweden and Scotland. He spoke Finnish poorly. As an unruly child, his uncle had sent him to the Finnish Cadet Corps, parts of the system of military schools that stretch across the Russian Empire. He had seen action in the Russo-Japanese War and returned from the war with his reputation enhanced. When World War I broke out, he was the commander of the Guards Cavalry Brigade and saw action along the Middle Vistula. After the February Revolution, he was promoted to Lieutenant General and given command of the 6th Cavalry Corps. But the new leaders, they questioned his loyalty. So therefore he was relieved and he left for Finland. In January 1918, Svinhufvud appointed Mannerheim to be the commander of the Finnish army, effectively the White Guards. Now, given the fact that Mannerheim had fought against the Germans in the First World War, he wasn't pro-German and therefore did not like the pro-German attitude of the conservative Finnish government. He preferred cooperation with Sweden, but Sweden did not want to get its hands dirty in this conflict, so therefore cooperation with the Germans was the only option. Under Mannerheim's command, 42,000 Russian troops that were still stationed in Finland were disarmed, and this gave the Finnish Whites considerable firepower. Now, I said the Swedish didn't get involved, but there were Swedish volunteers that were willing to help the Finnish Whites. Among them, there was a circle of staff.
So they basically shot their own foot with this one. Like, literally, nobody thought of that before appointing him?
Officers, and this gave Mannerheim the much needed military expertise to win the conflict. Interesting enough, the language of command in the Finnish White Army was Swedish, as Swedish was spoken by the Finnish upper classes. Early January 1918.
Oh, there's a scene in the movie that we saw where one of the soldiers that was captured, he says, "I speak Swedish like you do." And they ignored him and took him to, be executed with the other ones, which is really sad because, it was a war within their own, against their own.
As Swedish was spoken by the Finnish upper classes. Early January 1918, Mannerheim had set up his HQ in Vasa, 200 miles north of Turku. Mannerheim had secured northeastern Finland, a part of Karelia, the easternmost part of the country. Mannerheim denounced the mutilated bodies of murdered citizens and the ruins of burned villages, demanding revenge on the country's traitors. The aim was to liberate the South from the terrorist regime that was murdering, plundering, imprisoning and torturing the peaceful and law-abiding inhabitants. Between January and March 1918, the Red Guards murdered 1,650 people. These were mostly white sympathizers. These were mostly spontaneous outbursts of violence and not a coordinated plan of terror, as was the case in Soviet Russia, where the Bolsheviks exercised the Red Terror. Ragtag Red Guards took control of key cities of Viborg, Tampere, Turku, and of course Helsinki. The Reds were poorly led. In some cases they were supported by Russians, but the Russians were mostly resented by the Finns, and most of them were busy getting away from the country. On the 7th of March 1918, the Finno-German Treaty was signed. Germany would gain access to Finnish resources, control its foreign relations, and the right to keep a military presence. What Mannerheim feared had become a reality. Finland had become a de facto German client state. Although the Germans used different words, they declared, "We come as friends to help you, so that order, justice and liberty will again rule in your country. We do not come as conquerors." On the 15th of March 1918, Mannerheim launched his attack.
That's just kind of like a Trojan horse attempt to we do not come as conquerors, but as friends.
Not come as
That's
conquerors.
the oldest trick in the book.
On the 15th of March 1918, Mannerheim launched his attack. In the town of Kuru, the first serious fighting took place. The battle lasted the whole day, after which the Red Guards pulled back. Cautiously, the Whites advanced on Murole on the 19th of March. The capture of Orivesi was more difficult as the town changed hands several times. Despite the White victory, many Reds got out to help bolstering the defenses of the next city, Tampere. And that's where the heaviest battle of the Finnish Civil War took place. It was also the biggest urban battle in the history of the Nordic countries. As the Whites took Kangasala, just 9 miles, 15 kilometers to the east of Tampere, on the 22nd of March they initiated artillery fire, while the White troops that had taken Kangasala now pushed on Lampala, south of Tampere, effectively isolating the Red garrison. Mannerheim was convinced his victory would be swift, but he was mistaken, and he lost 150 men on the 25th of March. Mannerheim sent the Reds a message urging them to...
So, again, the movie we watched, which is the first Finnish movie that I watched, talks about the Battle of Tampere, and it also shows the good and the bad. But the main focus of it is to tell the story through the poetry or the notes from the soldiers. So they used to write notes, and that the movie was based on those notes. So it's very interesting because, like, in between the battle, you hear what they wrote down. So it's an interesting insight of what they were thinking and what was going on.
150 men on the 25th of March. Mannerheim sent the Reds a message urging them to surrender. Now, some of the Reds were willing to do this, but others believed that reinforcements were close. Nevertheless, some undertook a train breakout, but it was put to halt due to gunfire and therefore had to pull back. Nevertheless, some Reds did make it out on foot. On the 28th of March, Mannerheim had assembled more artillery and subjected the city to a heavy bombardment. Yet, the Red front line was closer to the White positions than believed, so most shells missed them. The attacking Whites therefore suffered heavy losses, but did secure considerable gains as the Reds pulled back to form a new defensive line. Mannerheim issued an ultimatum on the 1st of April, threatening to bombard Tampere with heavy artillery. The Red Army officers, they put it to a vote, and there was a majority to continue the fighting. Just by one vote. A heavy bombardment reduced much of Tampere to rubble, and on the...
Yo, that feels like a Squid Game moment. It feels like, if you watched season 2 of Squid Game, it feels like a Squid Game moment. That one vote decided the people should continue fighting. That's crazy, isn't it?
Just by one vote. A heavy bombardment reduced much of Tampere to rubble, and on the 3rd of April the Whites attacked again. What followed was house-to-house fighting. Some Reds managed to break out, while around 11,000 laid down their arms on the 6th of April. After the fighting in Tampere was over, the Whites started to round up people suspected of being a Red Guard. Even people who weren't involved became victim. One eyewitness recalled. From a distance, the Whites shouted if there were any Reds there in the house, and they searched the pockets of all of them and took them to the washing house, and after a while they were taken away from there and shot. Or actually, they were 3 Russians, the men the Whites had arrested. They were shot in the yard. I saw it myself from the kitchen window, and when they were shot in the hand, a amount of pink brains spread on the ground from everyone. Although Mannerheim had ordered that prisoners should not be shot out of hand, he did little to stop these wild killings. Several days earlier, on the 3rd of April, the 9,000 men of the German Baltic Division landed in Hanko, which they took control of without a fight. The Red government relocated to Viborg. The Germans soon captured a vital bridge at Ekenath intact. They then began to move on the Finnish capital. On the 11th of April, the first German cavalry units reached the outskirts of Helsinki. Van der Goltz encountered the first prepared defenses of the Reds. The Finnish Reds had around 7,000 soldiers in the city. They were no match for the German troops. The fighting continued until late on the 13th of April. The Germans suffered 60 casualties, the Whites 23, and between 300 and 400 Reds were either killed or wounded in action.
Dang.
A victory parade took place on the 14th. Other German units landed separately in Loviisa, 48 miles, 77 kilometers east of Helsinki. From there they seized Lahti on the 18th of April, cutting off the main Red forces from Viipuri and Russia. Despite Red counterattacks, they managed to hold till Mannerheim forces from the north reached them. Both the Germans and the White Finns marched on Viipuri. The core Red leaders had decided to take refuge in Russia. The remaining Red forces put up a hopeless defense. They fought a battle against an overwhelming enemy, and on the 1st of May, Mannerheim held his victory parade. The fighting lasted till the 15th of May. But as we saw in Tampere, White reprisals continued in the immediate aftermath of the battle, inspired by the words from, for example, Finnish General Ernst Löfström, who spoke, "Red leaders and Russian soldiers who fight are outside the law and can be treated accordingly." Many extrajudicial killings occurred. Among those killed were also females. Around 2,000 females served in the Red Guards. Once captured, many were raped before being shot. And the Red Guards that were not killed were interned, as historian Stephen Anthony Smith puts it. The Civil War ended on the 15th of May, but the killing did not. White terror claimed the lives of more than 5,600, and about 12,500 more would die of famine and disease in prison camps. All this in a country of just 3.1 million people. The Finnish War had been rightly called the first of the savage counter-revolutionary campaigns that would open a new chapter in 20th century political violence. The idea was that a kingdom of Finland was to be created with the German Prince Friedrich Karl of Hesse as its head of state. Due to Germany's defeat in November 1918, that decision was quickly overturned. To all Finnish viewers, I'm really curious, how is this conflict remembered in Finland as
That's
of
a good
today?
question.
When I was in Helsinki years ago, I spoke to a history student, and that history student told me the following. Finland has come to terms with what happened in the Second World War, but not really what has happened during the Finnish Civil War. To what extent is this the case? I know I have some Finnish viewers, so please, leave a comment. How is the Finnish Civil War remembered in Finland? Thanks to my patrons, you see their
That's a
names
great
right now.
question.
And a special thanks to Thomas Zabiega, Damian Wallace, Connor, Philip Jordan, Marcus Kaas, Nick Terranova, Haley, Mark Littlehill, Janusz Dorzinkiewicz, Joan, Justin Tabell, Tanya Dixie, Henry Clarkson, Lopar, Andrea Marti, Susanna Di Bellaton, John Beach, Fabrizio, Wayback History, Fernando Lopez Ojeda, and Mike West. If you want to learn about the Reds versus the Whites in Russia, click here and hear a video about Finland in World War II. Thanks for watching, and hivasti.
That was a very well explained video. That was really, obviously he's a history teacher. He knows what he's talking about. And it's a good question. How do Finns feel about that? What he mentioned was that they came to terms about the Second World War, but not the first one. And I wonder why that is. In any case, this is a very interesting topic that we have already covered watching the movie. I just didn't know what the war was about. I just knew about when we first watched it, we saw that there was the Reds versus the Whites. We didn't understand why initially, but this covers a lot of it. And it's a great film that, that we watched, the Battle of Tempera, with a lot of insights of how things were. And guys, it's absolutely horrible what had been done there, and the fact that they had, first of all, 36,000 people died, but they mentioned about the 2,000 women and what was done to them as well, which is absolutely horrible. And to think maybe if that one person voted against continue fighting, can you imagine a lot of things would have been avoided as well. But that's how, I guess that's how life is. A lot of people, um, they're not prepared to go to war. I think nobody is prepared to go to war, and these are all kids, young people who are sent out to war. It is not without reason Finland invests heavily in defense. Oh, they do? They invest a lot in defense nowadays? Yeah. It was a very dark time, you know, World War One, World War Two. And if we look at where we're going now, it's also a very worrying thing to think about. But hopefully we're not going to go back to those times. And I saw another video earlier today saying that we need to remember what was done back then so that we don't go through it again. And that's true. That's 100% true. But thank you so much. If you guys want to go and check out History Hustle, go check it out. Great channel, great informative video. And let me know your thoughts in the comments down below as well. Thank you, Bertil, for requesting this. Guys, go check out the movie reaction because that movie is really good as well. If you want to request a video, click over here, or click over here to see my Finland playlist. And we'll talk more in the comments. See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.